Marianne Stewart is from the Women's Rights Network Northern Ireland, which has welcomed the Supreme Court's decision. Do you agree there with what Robin said, that we have potentially gone down a road which is going to be very difficult for some people, Marianne?
For women, it's going to be a lot easier. We are delighted with the result.
Marianne, what are your concerns about trans rights?
I don't have any concerns about trans rights. My concerns are women's rights and our right to safety, privacy and dignity. And we think the Supreme Court clarified the law for employers and service providers, that we'll not have more Sandy Peggy cases coming before the courts. Women are entitled to spaces where men are not present.
Is there a way for trans people to be recognised that you're comfortable with?
They can be recognised as the sex that they are. And that is what the court has clarified, that in law they will be recognised by their sex, not how they dress or what they claim to be.
And Robin, what's your reaction to that?
Well, an illustration of the difficulty is that trans men often transition very successfully. They take testosterone, they look very male. And what this ruling does is suggest that trans men should be using female facilities. And that's an awful mess, because now we'll have an apparently masculine person with, it would seem, a right to use female facilities. And how do we test that? Do we stand, a security guard at the door of every toilet and changing room in the country?
Marianne, it's a good point, Marianne. You're talking about security and dignity there. If somebody comes into...
Is it really, though? I mean, before trans people came on the scene and started demanding entry to our spaces, there was a social grace where men stayed out of women's spaces. Why has that suddenly been abandoned, and why is it going to be suddenly so hard to revert back to?
No, the point that Robin's making is that if you have someone who is a trans man, and like you were saying, the sex in which they were born was female, and they're entering one of these spaces, but they're obviously going through a progression. They potentially may have facial hair, they may have a deep voice, they are on testosterone. But if we go down the route that you mentioned there now, they were born a female and they're in these areas, does that make it more difficult for you?
Oh, they're women, so they should be in women's spaces. I don't see what the issue is there. There may be maybe a bit of confusion when they first enter a space. But, I mean, we're programmed to spot a male and a female. I know men struggle with this, but women have evolved to understand and seek out who's male and who's female in a group. It's been for our own protection. And despite, I've seen trans men, and very few of them actually look like men. They just look like women with a beard. Their body shape is completely different. Our hips are wider, our bone structure is different, where we carry fat in our body is different. So there really is, there's very few men or very few women who pass as trans men. And why should all women give up their spaces to men because some women are pretending to be men and maybe pass?
That word pretending, or those words pretending to be, Robin, how did they sit with you?
Well, that's why the European Court of Human Rights said that a country has to have an effective means of acknowledging someone's transition, because that deals with this suggestion that people are pretending to do something. If there is a state-sponsored process that people go through and achieve recognition in their affirmed gender, then they're not pretending to do anything. And the long and difficult process that people go through to transition is not a question of pretending. That's an awful way of describing people.
How often, Marianne, have you encountered this, where you're in one of the spaces you mentioned? Let's just talk about toilet facilities, where somebody has come in that has made you uncomfortable and has meant that you do speak out about this.
It's happened a few times, and in some cases, they haven't been men pretending to even be women. They've just been men entering a woman's space because they felt that they had the right to now. And if we allow people who are trans, or men who are trans, into our spaces, then we're discriminating against other men who can't enter our spaces. Do you understand?
Do you expect this topic to go away now? Do you feel that this is strong enough now for this to go away, where you talked about the spaces where you feel vulnerable, or potentially you are now protected?
I feel that I don't think it's over. We have an awful lot of work still to do. Hospital wards need sorted, police strip searching needs sorted, prisons need sorted. All these institutions need to be reminded of the law, and it's going to take a while for that to filter through. Sports in particular needs to be sorted as well. Everybody concentrates on professional sport, but amateur sport is just as important for young girls and young women. Who I mean, even if it's a competition where there's absolutely no physical advantage for a man, he's still taking, or a boy, he's still taking a woman or girl's space away from her. And in a time when we're trying to encourage young girls and women to partake in sport, to be healthy, and we're allowing boys and men who have their own sports, their own category, to come in and take it from our women and girls. It's not fair.
Okay, Robin, Moira White, what are the next steps for trans people, and are you going to continue the fight?
Well, I'm a lawyer. I've acted on both sides of this particular conflict, so I act for the people who instruct me. But there is considerable upset amongst trans people who aren't going to. I mean, they live in society as responsible, useful members of society, and are not going to be put back in their box. And I'm sure are going to work very actively against the suggestion that they should be hidden away or in some third space.
Can I just interrupt you there, Robin? No one wants that. We don't want you to hide away. We don't want you to remove yourself from society. We just want you to remove yourself from women's spaces. That's all we're asking.
And when a trans person goes to the cinema and is offered and needs to use the lavatory of cinema, you're going to suggest that someone who looks completely female, has lived perhaps for decades as a female, is expected to use the men's at the cinema?
Okay. Well,
yes.
We've had this conversation.
Yes.
We've had this conversation. We've had this conversation already this evening. I'm sure this conversation is going to be had, and as both Robin and Marianne have said, that this topic has got a much more space, and it will develop, I'm sure, in the coming days, weeks, and months. Robin Moira White is a discrimination barrister and trans woman, and Marianne Stewart is from the Women's Rights Network. Thank you very much for joining us.